It's my pleasure and honor to be with you here. This is my fourth visit to Stockholm and Paideia. I have been here 3 times around 10 years ago, and I'm glad to be here again. Since okay, now you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Since we are approaching Rosh Hashanah, the New Year Day in Jewish tradition, I would like to shed some light on this day from the Hebrew Bible. What can we know about this day from the Hebrew Bible? We call it Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year. But when we start reading the Torah, the Pentateuch, well, there are some problems. First of all, we get the first information about the order of the Hebrew year in the book of Exodus, in chapter 12. And as you can see, this is the first source. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you." Okay, and then it is said, "Speak to the whole community of Israel and say that on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household." What months are we talking about when the people of Israel were commanded in Egypt to take a lamb and to prepare it? What month was it? Nisan, the time of the festival of Passover. So, according to Exodus 12, we will not have Rosh Hashanah soon. We have to wait half a year to have the first day of the year. The year starts in the month where Passover is celebrated, in the spring, not in autumn time. So why should we call it Rosh Hashanah, the festival that we are going to celebrate soon? The Shana, the year starts in springtime, not in fall time. Well, actually, the Torah is a book of many voices. You just mentioned my book, The Divine Symphony. It is about the various voices within the Bible. Because in the same book, in the book of Exodus, when we go further to Exodus chapter 23, it is said in verse 14, "3 times a year you shall hold a festival for me. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread." This is the Passover. In the months of Abib, in springtime, for in it you went forth from Egypt. And in verse 16 it is said, "And the first of harvest, of the first fruit of the work, which is what we call Shavuot, Hag HaKatzir, the feast of harvest." And finally, at the end of verse 16, it is said, "And the feast of ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in the result of your work from the field. So there are three main festivals. The first one is springtime. This is Passover. The second one in summertime. This is Shavuot, the Feast of the Harvest. And the third one is the time of gathering, Chag HaSif, which is celebrated, as it is said explicitly here, B'tzet Hashana, when at the end of the year. Which festival is the festival of gathering Asif? How do we call it nowadays? How we call this festival of gathering? Sukkot. So according to this verse, Sukkot is at the end of the year, which means when is New Year starts? Around the same time, in the fall. In the same book, the book of Exodus, we get contradicting information with regard to when does the year start, because Exodus 12 is telling us the first month is the month of where you celebrate the Passover, namely what we call now Nisan, in the springtime. But when you go further in the same book Exodus, this is yet the same book Exodus, you get a contradicting information saying that the festival of gathering, Chag HaSif, which is what we call today Sukkot, is at the end of the year. Namely, the year ends and starts a new year in the time of the fall, in the time where we are now. Oh, I'm confused. Actually, this is a very old confusion. Because if we go back before the time of the Bible to the traditions of the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, in what today is Syria and Iraq, there were a different culture there. And actually, the name of the months that we use now in Hebrew calendar are taken from them, because when the Jews were in exile in Babylon, after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem, they were exiled by the Babylonians to Babylon. They have adapted the names of the months from Babylonian. So when we will have the festival of Rosh Hashanah in shortly, which Hebrew months it will mark? Tishrei. Tishrei is an Akkadian name. It's from the word, it is called Tashritu, which means beginning. This is because this was the beginning of the year. So year, we assume the year of the Babylonian started in the fall time, right? Yes.
Was the year a lunar or a solar year? It might be a change.
They have a combination of lunar and solar. It didn't change. I mean, the seasons were fixed. However, when we go to the names of the months, I mean, what is the months after Tishrei? How is it called in Hebrew? Cheshvan. And those who are very want to do it very correctly, they call it Mar Cheshvan. Have you heard the name Mar Cheshvan? In modern Hebrew, it sounds like Mr. Cheshvan, but no, this is Mar Cheshvan. This is the full name, Mar Cheshvan. Why is it Mar Cheshvan?
It's bitter.
Bitter. Why? Okay, so I had I was in kindergarten, early kindergarten and more advanced kindergarten. So my first teacher in kindergarten, she said it's called Mar Cheshvan, the bitter Cheshvan, because there are no holidays in Cheshvan. So it's bitter because we don't get any day free. My more advanced kid, she knew Bible, the teacher in the more advanced kindergarten, and she said, Mar Cheshvan, Mar is a drop of water. Because in the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 40, it is said, Hen goyim kemar midli. The nations are like a drop of water. So why it is called Mar Cheshvan? Because there are drops of water in Israel climate starting in Cheshvan. However, the truth is that both of them were wrong. Why it is called Mar Cheshvan? Because in Babylon it was called Arach Shawana. Arach Shawana, which means what? Month number 8. The 8 months in Babylon. So see, Tishrei is the beginning of the year, and then in Babylon, and the next month is called month number 8, which means when does this year start? In Nisan, in springtime. So the Babylonian calendar itself, the names of the months that we have borrowed for them, reflect this duality. This duality, inner contradiction, didn't start with the book of Exodus. It is a very, very old problem. Probably it's a philosophical question. When do we see the beginning of the year? In the fall, where after you gather everything in the climate of the Middle East, and you start working for the new, working in the field for the new year, or beginning is in the springtime, after we pass the winter and there is a blooming of the spring. This should be the beginning of the year. So there is two options. To see the year as beginning in springtime, this is Exodus 12, or to see the year starting in fall time, this is Exodus 23, the other possibility. So the duality is built in Mesopotamian tradition and also in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, fine. I start to understand. Not much, but I know that I'm allowed to call it Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, because there is Exodus 23 that says that the year starts then. However, what about this festival? What is the main ritual of the festival? The blowing of the shofar. Why do we blow the shofar? Why? There was a medieval authority. His name was Rav Saadia Gaon. He lived in Egypt and in Babylon in the 9th century. And he gave 10 different explanations or reasons why you should blow the shofar. When you give 10 different explanations, it means that the issue is not clear, that there is a mystery. So you give another explanation and another explanation and another explanation because there is a mystery. So actually, the issue of the blowing of the shofar is an old mystery. And I will try to shed some light on this mystery. But first, we will see the biblical references to the blowing of the shofar. Okay, this is in the second page. The blowing of the shofar is mentioned twice in the Torah, one in Leviticus, one in Numbers. Pense, I will give you a task to read for us Leviticus 23, verse 22.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelite people thus, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what is the date which is given? First day of the 7th month. Why is it called the 7th month?
Because it's from Nisan is the 7th month.
Yes, this is according to the observation that the year starts in springtime. So if you count from Nisan, you come to Tishrei as the 7th month. In the first day, you shall, the Hebrew is Shabbaton Zichron Torah, which is translated here as a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. Why loud blasts? I don't know. Commemorated with loud blast. Okay. Let's see, maybe the next paragraph will help us better. This is from Numbers, the book of Numbers. Would you please read for us?
Yes. From the beginning.
Yeah, 29, verse 1.
In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. You shall observe it as a day when the horn is sounded.
Yes, continue, please.
You shall present a burnt offering of pleasing odor to the Lord, 1 bull of the herd, 1 ram, and 7 yearling lambs, without blemish.
Okay, thank you. So, the date is the same, the first of the 7th month, and a day when the horn is sounded. Does it supply better explanation why you should? No, we don't know. The Hebrew is Yom Teruah. Why should you hear the sound of the horn on that day? What for? What is the symbolic meaning of it? Mystery. Nothing is said. Oh. So, I try to solve the problem. It's a mystery. So how can you solve mysterious issues? You have to act like a detective. You have to try to see all the details. Maybe something will give you a hint about it. So what I did is, I know that most of you probably are not enthusiastic by sacrifices. This is my assumption. I speak in Stockholm, not in Jerusalem, or some sections of Jerusalem. So I don't think there is great enthusiasm here about sacrifices. Am I right? Probably. Some of you are probably vegetarians, so this is a problem from this side. Okay. But anyhow, I just ask you to read verse 2 again, and see what are the sacrifices which are brought on that day. What are the sacrifices? 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. Okay? 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs. Okay. I try to take this detail, the recept of the sacrifices, and I went over other festivals which are listed in this chapter to see if there is anywhere the same combination of sacrifices. Okay? So the next paragraph starts with the verse 7, which is said on the 10th day, it's the bottom of page 2, on the 10th day of the same 7th month, you shall observe sacred occasion when you shall practice self-denial. Wow, what a translation. Practice self-denial. I think many Jews are doing it every day. This is a horrible translation. Excuse me, the translator, the JPS translation. This is an awful translation. What is the Hebrew? Ve'initem et nafshotechem. How would you translate this?
I don't know, some sort of suffering.
Yeah, you will cause suffering, you will afflict yourself, right? It's a day of affliction, not self-denial. Self-denial. Who knew about self-denial in biblical times? Before Freud and psychology, who knew about self-denial? This is modern terms. Okay, so there is on the 10th day of the 7 months, which is this day, there is a day of self-affliction. What festival are we talking about? What day are we talking about? Yom Kippur, that's true. So this self-affliction is fasting and the other afflictions that are done in Yom Kippur. What is the recept of sacrifices for this day? What are the sacrifices which are brought on the day on Yom Kippur? The same, that's true, the same combination. Verse 8, you shall present to the Lord a burnt offering, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs. The same combination. Okay, so the combination is in Rosh Hashanah, similar combination in the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. And there is also another day, a third day, which has the same combination. I would not make you to read all the list. I will tell you where to find it. We don't usually in class I ask my students to read it, but you are not my students in the university. So I will give you the information. Look on verse 35. Verse 35 is about the 8th day of the festival of Sukkot. 8th day of festival of Sukkot. 35. Ivana, would you read?
Yes.
Please.
On the 8th day you shall hold a solemn gathering. You shall not work at your occupations. You shall present a burnt offering, an offering by fire or pleasing odor to the Lord. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 yearling lambs, without blemish.
Okay, thank you. So this is the same. So how we call this the last day of Festival of Sukkot? The day of the gathering, how we call it? Shmini Atzeret. The 8th day of the Festival of Sukkot, gathering. Atzeret, gathering. Okay, so I'm the detective, you remember? So I said, okay. Let's see what I found. This combination is there in Yom HaTeruah, the blowing, in the day of fast, Yom Kippur, and in Atzeret, gathering. Tuk, 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 tuk. Well, red light. Red light came into my mind. I remembered a verse in the book of Joel. Do you know the book of Joel? It is in the 12 minor prophets. And this is the text in page 5. תקעו, the Hebrew is תקעו שופר בציון, קדשו צום, קראו עצרה. Blow a horn in Zion, solemnize a fast, proclaim an assembly. Actually, the three terms, blowing, fast, and assembly, gathering, is in the same verse. So what is the connection? Is it a clue for something, or just I spend time on reading list of sacrifices? I think there is something there. What happened in the book of Joel? Anybody remember the book of Joel? Do you remember him? Joel? No? Okay. I will give you the information again. The book of Joel is, main event there is Arbe, locusts. There was a plague of locusts, which ate all the corn. So Joel is saying to the people, you know what you have to do? Tik'u shofar b'Tzion, blow shofar in Zion. Kadshu tzom, make a holy fast. Fast. Kiru atzara, call an assembly, a gathering. To do what? All of this is done to pray to God to save the people, because they will starve if this locust will continue to eat the corn. It's all these forms are connected, might be connected with the need to pray to God to help and to save the people. So I would like to suggest that one aspect of the blowing of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, taken together with the fast of Yom Kippur and with the gathering at the end of Chag Sukkot, is in order to ask the mercies of God to help, not with locusts, but probably in the climate of Israel, this is the time when you ask for rain. And this is actually what we do even today in the last day of Sukkot. In Shmini Atzeret, there is a prayer for rain. So one suggestion that I would like to make is that the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is connected with a feeling of an anxiety, because this is the eve of the season of rain, and in ancient times, if you didn't have rain in the year, you would die. It is now because of global warming that we didn't have enough rain in Israel for the last 6 years. The situation of the Sea of Galilee, Kinneret, is the worst ever measured. We are not dying in Israel. Why do we have? Because we have water, from, how do you say it, Atpalat Mayim?
Desalination.
Yes, this is what saved Israel. Otherwise, we wouldn't have water to drink. But in ancient times, you didn't have all this technology. If there was no rain, you didn't have water to drink, the fields didn't bring you any corn, this was life threat. So because of this is a time of anxiety, and the blowing of the shofar, together with the fast, together with the gathering and the assembly, is meant to do, to ask the mercy of God. In the Babylonian traditions, this period is the period of the decision on the fate of the year. And this is true also in Jewish traditions, that this is Yom Hadin. This is the day of judgment. So the fate of the year is decided on Rosh Hashanah, and the blowing of the shofar, together with the fast, together with the gathering, and the prayer is meant for this. However, there is also another aspect to the blowing of the shofar. And this is reflected in our ritual of Rosh Hashanah, in the fact that before, according to the old tradition, before you blow the shofar, there is one psalm which is read 7 times. 7 times before you blow the shofar. And this is Psalm 47. Let's have a short look on Psalm 47. Psalm 47. Who would like to read it for us? Do I have a volunteer? Or I will take one of my Paideia students. Willie? You? Okay, read it for us. Loudly.
For the leader of the keys of sound, all you people, clap your hands, raise a joyous shout for God. For the Lord Most High is awesome, great King over all the earth. He subjects people to us, sets nations at our feet. He chose our heritage for us, the pride of Jacob, whom he loved.
Selah. Okay, go on.
God sends this acclamation, the Lord to the blast of the horn. Sing, oh sing to God. Sing, oh sing to our King. For God is King over all the earth. Sing a hymn. God reigns over the nations. God is seated on his holy throne. The great of the peoples are gathered together. The retinue of Abraham's God.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you. We clap our hands for Willie. Okay, so the other aspect of the blowing of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah is connected to the perception of God as King of Israel, as King of the world. And as we know from the Bible, for instance, when Solomon was crowned after, when David, just before the death of David, his supporters took him to the spring of Jerusalem, the Gihon, which we talked in class about it, and they blew the shofar and said, "Long live King Solomon." So blowing of shofar was used in biblical time to appoint new king. So the day of Rosh Hashanah is seen already from biblical times probably as a day of coronation of God. A day of coronation of God. So actually, the blowing of the shofar has 2 main connections and meanings. One is connected with asking for the mercy of God, because this is a day of judgment. This is a day of divine decision on the fate of the year, about rain, about supplying the needs of humanity. And the other aspect is the aspect of the coronation of God as a king of the earth. Both aspects, and by this I will finish, I don't have time to go to the details, but I will talk about it in general terms, are reflected in the prayer of Rosh Hashanah, mainly in the prayer of Musaf, the prayers that we say in the middle, the second public prayer in the day of Rosh Hashanah, which is combined of three parts, which are called Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. The first one is to announce the kingdom of God. It's about coronation of God and the blowing of there are quotations from the Bible about the idea of God as a king, which are read. 10 quotations from the Bible. And then we have Zichronot, which has to do about the request from God to remember us in a good manner in this day of judgment. So both of these elements are reflected in the Jewish prayer of Rosh Hashanah as we have it now. There are more issues to deal with, but I was warned by Ivana, 1 hour, this is your limits. And I've already passed it. So I don't want to delay it further. So I will stop now, but I will take some questions. So please, if you have any question, you are welcome to ask. Yes, please.
I think we can go on for another 20 minutes. We have plenty of time.
Plenty of time? Do I have plenty of time?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will talk shortly about the third element, which is also reflected in the prayer. I said that the prayer of Musaf is divided into three parts. One is Malchuyot, which is about the coronation of God in Rosh Hashanah. The second is Zichronot. We're asking the favor of God. We ask to be remembered by Him in a good way in the day of judgment. The third one is Shofarot, about the blowing of the Shofar. And the biblical quotations connected with Shofar are a combination of mainly two elements. One is the memory of the revelation at Sinai, which was with the shofar blowing at the ritual in Sinai. There was a call shofar, there was a voice of shofar in Sinai. The other aspect, which is, I believe, more significant in this prayer, is the expectation for the end of days, the eschatological expectation, which is presented by verses from the prophets who are talking about the blowing of the shofar at the end of days in the time of redemption. This is an element which does not appear in the Torah itself. I just told my student today that the Torah has no messianic or eschatological expectation. The Torah is about the situation of now, about the current situation, not about the world to come, not about the Messiah, not about any dramatic change which will happen in the world. The Torah ignores all of it. However, the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Micah, Amos, Joel, and others developed the eschatological messianic anticipation and expectation. Namely, history will end in one day. The regular history, the regular world that we are living in, the situation of war, bloodshed, suffering that we see in our life this will end in a miraculous way at the end of days. And the coming of the last period, the end of days, will be announced by a horn, a blowing of a horn. So the blowing of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, not in the way it is in the Torah, but in the way it was perceived later in Jewish tradition, was also combined with the expectation of the coming of the Messianic era of redemption. And also, this is also a very significant part of the prayer of the Rosh Hashanah, that the God of Israel would be recognized by the entire humanity. There are many, many references in the prayer of Rosh Hashanah about the expectations that the entire humanity will be united in the worship and the knowledge of the one God. This is an expectation for a better future, for a future of peace, like in the vision of Isaiah, at the end of days, will be in some way, and here I connect myself to my class this morning, will be going back to the beginnings of time, the ideal beginnings of time in Genesis. Because according to Genesis 1, God gave a vegetarian diet to the entire cosmos. It is said at the end of Genesis 1, all of you, all my creatures, you should eat plants and grass. No one was allowed to eat meat, according to Genesis 1. Later on, it was spoiled, and the eating of meat was allowed. But in the far future, this is Isaiah 11, there will be peace and harmony, and the lions will eat salad every day 3 times. Okay, this is the eschatological, messianic expectation. It is more important about human beings that they will live in peace and in harmony and with less hatred than we see now. This is the third aspect of the prayer of Rosh Hashanah and the blowing of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah, a sign of expectation for better existence of humanity. Yes?
Why do we blow the shofar already this week and last, from which day?
Okay. Later on in the development of Judaism, the whole month of Elul was announced as preparation. Okay, you have to start the process of correction of the self, repentance, already from the first day of Elul. So it is done even before. But this is not in the Bible. It's a post-biblical issue. More questions? Everything is clear. Okay, I'm glad. You have something to ask? Yes.
Why should you make repentance and this expectation to do this if everything will anyway go to? Why should you prepare yourself to make yourself a better human, maybe from Elul all the time until Yom Kippur? Because the explanation you just gave is that it will anyway, everything will be changed.
In the end of days.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, we don't know when the end of days will come. What shall we do meanwhile? How we shall live better life as individuals and as a community before the Messiah comes. Who knows when the Messiah is going to come? Meanwhile, we have to work on ourselves and correct our ways. And because Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment, and the whole period was perceived as a period of judgment, this is a time of correction of the self. It's not just the physical issue of fasting, this is also in the book of Isaiah. What God wants is not just that you will afflict yourself or self-denial, according to this awkward translation. He wants you to change your ways, to be better in your relationship with others, to be kind to the poor people in society, to be sensitive to them. This is the fast according to the book of Isaiah that God wants. So there is all process of preparation and inner work on improving your ways in the time of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Messiah, let him come whenever he will come. We don't know. Yes.
I still don't have so clear. If you go back to the verse in Yoel.
Yes.
So there's 3 elements.
Yes.
And 2 of them make sense to me. Kichu Tzom, to do a fast day, I understand. And Kiruat Sarah, make them gathering, we're going to do something together. But I don't see why you needed to blow the shofar for the first day. Why not just the other 2? What's the shofar?
The blow of the shofar is the people were concerned. It is said, for instance, in the book of Amos, "Hayitaka shofar ba'ir ve'am lo yechradu." The blowing of the, is it possible that the shofar is blown? Somebody blows the shofar and people are not frightened? It's a sign of concern, of announcement, that something.
But it's not, the other 2 are what we're doing to make ourselves better. The
Yes.
first one, we're not doing anything. It's like to sort of give an artificial poke that we should do the next 2 things. But the first one is not really using it. It's not making us better people.
It's some kind of announcement. This is important issues are, you should make a fast, you should gather. It's connected with the whole thing. It's a combination of ritual that announce the significance of the day and the request from God. Yes, please.
Okay, just I wonder if there is a connection between blowing the shofar in the Rosh Hashanah, and when the Israel has a danger, like to scare the enemy, when there's a war time like that, and
Well, you're right. We have the famous story about Jericho, the conquest of Jericho in the book of Joshua. They surrounded the city and blow the shofar. But I don't think that there are military aspects to Rosh Hashanah in the Jewish tradition. I don't think that it is taken as a military. It was used in a military context in the biblical time, but I don't think in Rosh Hashanah. I don't think it's correct. Okay. Yes, please.
2 questions.
2 questions. The price of 1. Yes,
Yes.
do it. I just have to sit. Okay.
Yes, please. You talk about some option how to count, איך יחשב את ראש השנה, מתי שזה נופל. But it's not that clear because still, if Sukkot is the last and Rosh Hashanah, it's because it's about the same. Well, then it's 1 month, the whole year.
Yeah.
So, which option you like, and if you have a third one, and then another question about the Hebrew, Alei Isha. I don't understand this.
Which one?
Probably. I don't know if it looks like Isha, like woman.
Ishe.
But
The word Ishe, you ask about the word Ishe, the sacrifices?
Yes.
Okay. So your first question was that what do I prefer?
No, if you can give me a good option, why we have it soon?
Why we have it soon?
Yes.
Okay, as I said, this is a very old tradition, also from the Babylonian tradition, Tashri to Tishrei is the beginning. So we follow this is a tradition of like 6,000 years. The Babylonian culture was started 4,000 BC. So Tashritu, this is the beginning, this is the new year. This is a good basis, I would say, to follow. With regard to the word Ishe, this is the word about sacrifices. You saw it in few places. Let's say in verse 25 of Leviticus 23. It says, "You shall not work at your occupation, and you shall bring an offering by fire to the Lord." So these translators, they interpreted the word Ishe as connected to ash, to fire. But this is an old wisdom. There is new wisdom, which is connected to discoveries of an archive of documents or texts in the city of Ugarit, which is in Syria. And in the Ugaritic texts, which were composed a little bit before the beginning of the Bible, of the biblical period, we did give a different interpretation, which is probably better. That the word Ishe is parallel to the Hebrew word Shai. What is the Hebrew word Shai means? Shai is a gift. This is a feminine form of the same word, which means you will give a gift to the Lord as the sacrifice. This is probably the original meaning of the word Ishe. It is a gift. It is not connected to ash fire, but it is a gift. Okay. Oh, another question. Good. Okay.
Okay. There's an explanation why in Rosh Hashanah people have to celebrate and joy, then come the redemption in the Yom Kippur.
Why we have to to be happy in Rosh Hashanah?
And then
Yes. This goes. This issue goes back to very old story in the Bible itself, because in the book of Nehemiah we have a story about the reading of the Torah after the people came back from the exile in Babylon. Ezra, the scribe, they gathered in Rosh Hashanah, and Ezra, the scribe, read to them the whole Torah in Rosh Hashanah. And there were many commandments they forgot. And they were crying because they were ashamed that they didn't perform the commandments in the right way. And they cried and cried. And he said, no, go to your house, eat, be joyful, because you have to rely on God. So on the one hand, we ask for His mercy. On the other hand, we have to celebrate and to feel joy because we rely on His help. This is the combination of Rosh Hashanah. A day of awe, but also a day of joy. So I wish you that in your Rosh Hashanah today, you will have a lot of joy. About awe, I hope that you will personally feel the feeling of awe, but publicly have joy, celebrate, dance. This is my blessing.